Hello, welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. Today we're going to listen to one of the greatest bands in the world, obviously. This suggestion I got from the YouTube comments is from someone named Benja. Another great option would be Avenged Sevenfold, Little Piece of Heaven. We all know Avenged Sevenfold was a phenomenal band before they sold out, became poser pop rock guys, and then tried to make metal. This is a song from when Avenged Sevenfold was actually good. Let's dig into it.
Story begins. Is it such a sin?
I love that use of oboe to complement the empty spacing in the drums.
We were more than friends before the story ends.
Oh, we've actually put we put another woodwind on the right side. Really playful rhythmic stuff with the brass. Yeah, nice dynamic swell there. Wow, the unhinged element in his vocals. Really getting that grittiness in there. Yeah, that rhythmic, the rhythmic synergy going on there.
I really always knew that my little crime would be cold. That's why I got a heater for your thighs. And I know it's not your time, but bye-bye. And a word to the wise, when the fire dies, you think it's over, but it's just begun. Baby, don't cry. You had my heart, at least for the most part.
Clever bit of wordplay there. You had my heart, but he actually has her heart.
We fell apart. Let's make a new start.
I like how the music is very whimsical right here, providing like this sort of lovely element to it. And of course, it seems to be a one-sided love.
Possibilities I never considered are occurring, the likes of which I never heard. Now an angry soul comes back from beyond the grave to repossess somebody with which I misbehaved. Smiling right from ear to ear.
Yes.
Yeah,
I love those little brass ideas. A little bit of accordion in there. Yeah, really going for a wide sound here. Very layered, very rich. I'm a bit disappointed that these quieter sections are not actually that quiet.
In a word to the wise, when the fire dies, you think it's over, but it's just begun.
Yeah, beautiful use of all of the strings and brass and some of the orchestral percussion elements too.
Let's make a new start. 'Cause everybody's gotta die sometime, yeah, yeah. My baby, don't cry.
Yeah, the production in this though, I think that's the part. That's the best part. I love the strings right here. Nice little duet. I think this is what, the 5th or 6th vocal style? I love the sort of natural distortion they're getting out of the brass here, just from overplaying. Yeah, that theme actually moved from the choir to the trombone.
Because I really always knew that my little crumb would be cold. That's why I got a heater for your thighs. And I know it's not your time, but bye-bye. And a word to the wise, when the fire dies, you think it's over, but it's just begun. But baby, don't cry. You had my heart, at least for the most part. 'Cause everybody's gotta die sometime.
That higher pitched distorted Muppet voice.
Let's make a new start. 'Cause everybody's gotta die sometime, yeah, yeah. My baby, don't cry.
Alright. Full disclosure, I have heard that song before. Many a year ago. Golly, over a decade. When did this come? 09? I think that was when the single came out though. The album was a little earlier than that, no? I could have sworn I had heard this in high school, but it might have been college. Might have been back at uni. Anyways, though, I got a lot to say. First of all, a while back we had a theme that was exceptional use of orchestra in a rock or metal song. I don't think the rock or metal part was actually part of it. It's just exceptional use of orchestra in mainstream music. And this is what I'm talking about. Now, I think this kind of went a little bit too far. The guitars in the rock band actually got way underplayed. They really only came out at the end when we had the Afterworld element or afterlife element, and then the wedding scene. But prior to that, really kind of non-existent, allowing the strings and the brass and woodwind to really flesh out most of the song, which makes sense given what they were aiming for, what they were going for. I don't think up to this point Avenged Sevenfold had ever written anything on this level. So it actually, as far as just playing it safe, if you're used to writing for five voices, two guitars, bass, drums, vocals, yeah, five voices, and now you're writing for pretty much a full orchestra, uh, it's better to play it safe and remove the instruments you can and really pare it down, because it's going to be a completely different style of writing music, having to take into account everything else that's going on. And I think if you'll notice, there really aren't too many sections where there's more than two or three instruments being utilized simultaneously. It really is passing the torch. Maybe the trombone will play a little lick, and then they'll come off, and the woodwind, the oboe will play something, and then the trumpet will come in and play something, and maybe you have some strings underneath all this. If you really listen closely to how they're orchestrating it, they are not creating a full, rich orchestral production here. It really is using the instruments little bits at a time, which makes perfect sense. If you're not used to writing for so many simultaneous voices, the best thing you can do is provide ample space for all of them, which means utilizing the voices you need at each given moment. And the opening verse chorus idea, I might even wager there's a pre-chorus in there with how lengthy the sections are. It definitely makes a lot of sense given what they're doing in these opening sections to not overly commit to the guitar too much, especially since they're going to need it to contrast what we were doing in the first half of the song with the second half of the song. So yeah, it does err a bit, maybe too far into the orchestral area, removing some of the rock elements. But if you want to be a rock song, a rock band, metal band incorporating orchestral elements, this would actually be an example of something I would point towards as an example to listen to and to really analyze what's going on. Unlike a lot of symphonic metal, I think that's what it's called, classical metal? No, I think it is symphonic metal, where the strings are utilized just as a foundational work or just as an atmospheric work to provide that string sound and probably just play chords. This utilizes each of the instruments in their own unique ways in writing that is not traditionally rock or metal. So they're utilizing the timbres and the style of music that they're usually come from. We actually see bits of classical and some big band ideas pop up in here. It is sort of a grab bag of ideas that these instruments are typically a part of. It's interesting to kind of see the song shift between jazzier flavors and more classical flavors. And like I said, it's really cool to see a band say, hey, we want brass, we want string, we want woodwind, and we're not just going to give them chords to play while the guitars do all the work. We're going to use them to help mold the song. And that's just something we don't see too often. It's why we had an entire themed week about it, because I think for whatever reason, we ended up listening to a lot of bands that had just, string chords in the background of whatever the music was. And I was getting a little fed up with it, I think, at the time. So it was nice to explore some rock and metal music. I think we even did a pop track that utilized instruments more like this. I also think there's a real playfulness to it. I mentioned right at there at the beginning, we had the drums doing something very special. It's like a doom doom, doom doom, and there's all this space between the hits. And that space was being filled in by an oboe that was left panned. And I thought that was really nice. You get this sort of back and forth idea. Now, the oboe wasn't just filling in the space, it was playing constantly. It was also going with the drums, but also just having it fill in the space that the drums and guitar were creating gives it this back and forth feel. And then when the whole band comes in, we actually get another instrument. I think it was a brass left hand that was doing something similar but different. And I think it was an inverted line, same rhythm, just if the notes were to go up and then down, this instrument was going down and then up. It inverted the direction based on note relationship. So if you went up a half step, it would go down a half step. And if your next note was, down a whole step, it would be going up a whole step. It basically just inverts the one line on the y-axis. Y-axis. So yeah, we have really playful ideas like that going on. There's also one incident in a pre-chorus, I think it was, where we had trumpets and trombones kind of doing one thing, and they were doing these staggered. I think it was staggered playing, where like one would do the lick, and then the other one would do it, and then another one would do it, and you'd get this cohesive idea, but in little snippets of different timbres. Sort of along the lines of a hocket, but a hocket usually doesn't split it up so neatly. Usually it'd be like one note and then two notes and then three notes, then two notes and then one note, rather than basically this repeated lick of like da da dun da da dun da da dun dee da dun. You get the same lick from multiple different voices and different ranges, and it creates this nice little phrase created from all of these tones. Another really nice tool that was utilized here. Um, what's another Oh, the ending. Right before, it was somewhere in the ending. I don't know if it's right before the wedding or right after the wedding or during the wedding. I don't know. Somewhere in that last 2 minutes of the song, though, we had the tuba, the trombone, the trumpet, pretty much all the brass coming in with these almost forzandos attacks, which is when you hit a note at like the maximum volume and then you bring it down to a really quiet volume and you rise it back up, so you get the bum. You get that real sharp attack, but then you also get a fade in on top of it. It's a really cool idea. And we were getting these really sharp attacks from him, and then I don't think we were getting the fade. We weren't getting a full sforzando. It was more like a really strong attack and then bringing it down a little bit so that the next instrument could get a strong attack on top of it, and you didn't have this constant volume rise, as each one had to be louder than the one before it. You can hit the volume and then bring it down so the next one can hit that same volume and still sound louder. But we did that quite a few times. I think there was like 5, 6, 7, 8 notes doing this climbing idea, and they were getting louder and louder to the point that there was actual distortion in the sound. And that's what happens when you push almost too much air. It's too much power into the instrument, and it actually gets a bit of distortion to it. Usually, in most playing, it's something you want to avoid. It's this very specific texture that the composer is going to want to specifically utilize at a time. It's not usually a tool that the instrumentalist, the performer, is going to have a decision on. It's either going to be something that specifically works for his section, or it's something you're just not going to do. Now, if you're the musician and the performer, like it's a trumpet solo, whatever, that's on you to decide it. But in most classical music or big band music, you're not going to hear too much of it because it is sort of like dissonance. It is an abrasive texture that usually works against what a lot of big band and classical music typically aims for. I would assume that a lot of, I would assume in more modern music, it's utilized more often as we approach music in different lights. We have avant-garde music, we have sonorism movement, we have explorations of dissonance and stuff. So I could imagine it's utilized more often nowadays. But traditionally, you wouldn't really hear it that often. So I think it's really cool that it's utilized here in a way that actually makes a lot of sense and works well with the sound of metal, especially since the guitars tend to get distorted. We have a lot of vocal distortion. So yeah, it's really cool to hear that technique utilized in a song and just really work, really nail it. Um, let's see. I think that's going to be about it for the non-rock instruments. they're utilized so well. And the more you listen to it, like it's been years since I've heard it. I'm sure if I listened to it a couple more times, I would hear more and more and more interesting things that I didn't necessarily hear on this listen. Um, there's just little nuances all throughout. I think it's fantastic. Vocals, though, I really want to touch on these. I think it's important. The song is very story based. There are very few moments where there are not vocals going on. It's an 8 minute song, and they cram a lot of words, a lot of spoken, or sorry, a lot of language story into these 8 minutes. Um, yeah, geez, they're really, I'm thinking back on it. I'm like, there really is not any breaks for these vocals. The vocalists, I say that because we do have a female vocal for a very short moment in the song. Uh, just they go through so many different styles and timbres. The lead vocalist has like three different cleans, three different growls, or not growls, but harshes. All sorts of different types of compression and aggression. Just a real strong control over their vocal style and vocal delivery. And I love how it all comes together to not only showcase multiple voices for different characters in the song, but also to showcase various states of mind. Um, just for instance, the time when, right at the beginning, when I think it's the first harsh vocal in the song, it's not even super harsh, it's just a little bit of edge on a clean, but it's just the power behind it. It's when the main character is killing his girlfriend. Um, there's just so much grit and distortion in it, and then the laugh that comes like right around it. It perfectly ties into this element of somebody who is sense, losing grip on reality. We were talking about this earlier this week, actually, with Murder Seed from Tala, and how sort of adding less control to the vocal style and allowing the vocals to kind of do what they're going to do rather than really hone it in and make a specific sound, a specific tone, really works well with these characters who might lose sense with reality, and it helps add to that mental break, to see that they are not in a state of mind that is societally accepted, and you can hear that in their voice. It's fantastic to. I mean, we see that in film all the time. We have these characters. Take animated Joker, Mark Hamill's Joker. There is something very inhuman. Well, not inhuman. It's still a very human voice, but there's something very detached from reality in the way that he portrays the Joker, in the raspiness of it, in the random outbursts of volume and range. Um, the grittiness and all of it. And we've been doing this in film for a long time, but I feel like it's just not done as much in music, and maybe that's just because music isn't usually a storytelling method in the way that the vocalist is providing voices for each character. They're more of single vocal, single style often. So I think it's just a treat when a vocalist has maybe not necessarily the technique. I think this vocalist does have a very strong ability to utilize a lot of voices, but even vocalists who don't, but they just have the mindset of saying, hey, we have multiple characters. I want them all to be voiced, slightly different. And they go for it, even if it doesn't work out properly or perfectly, I suppose. Just having that intent of saying, I want to try something new with my voice. And like I said, even the last vocals, when they were doing the duet, the vocal duet at the end, the vocal harmony, not the duet, the harmony in the final chorus, he puts a little bit of rasp, grit on a falsetto almost. Maybe it's a mixed. And to me, it sounds very Muppet-like. I don't think it landed the way it was supposed to. But again, went out there and did it. And I have to appreciate just having that attention to detail, saying, hey, we want different voices for the characters. I'm going to do my best to make 9 voices. Let's go for it. I don't think you can you can discredit that, even if it's not done perfectly all the time. Um, yeah, I think that kind of ties everything up musically. I do. Well, no, I already talked. I was going to say I was going to like how they kind of move between different ideas, but we already touched on that with classical versus big band, and then of course the metal outro, metal core outro, hard rock, whatever you want to call it. Um, so yeah, I think the last thing I really want to talk about though is the story, the lyrics. Um, I when I listened to this as a 20 something, assuming that the 2009 is correct and it didn't come out earlier. Um, I thought it was a romantic song. I did. It's kind of weird knowing I thought that, listening to it now, and just kind of being utterly disgusted by the story. First of all, the main character is extremely entitled, and someone told him no, so he killed them. Like, I can't get behind that at all. Um, and then necrophilia. So, I gotta push that whole origin of this story. What pushed the entire events, what brought the catalyst to this whole story is just not working for me at the age of 30 something. Uh, uh, yeah. So that's just I have to call that out. I think it's also equally weird that the story just reversed itself in the second verse. I don't That's kind of weird to me. Like, I get she came back from the dead wanting revenge. She got her revenge, and then I believe, interesting here, I want to touch on this real quick. I believe she also engaged in necrophilia, though. Is it necrophilia if they're both zombies? I don't know. Um, but with the first time with the guy engaging in it, we saw a lot of the event itself. We saw her head, we saw them in the covers afterwards, but when she did it to the guy's corpse, it was a shadow on a tombstone. We didn't get to see any of the event, or I should say, any of the. I don't know the best way to word it. We saw a shadow of it though. It was almost like alluding to it rather than showing it, which is what happened the first time, and that's kind of a weird line to draw there. There's also the juvenile humor, which I it still kind of makes me chuckle, but it is not as funny as it was back then. The thigh heater, that's just like I said, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. It still put a smile on my face, but it's still kind of like they went there. But then the whole ending of the song, I just cannot get behind anymore. This person had her life taken from her, and she decides she wants to marry him just because she got her revenge. Like, the story is very much told from the male perspective, and I mean, he included in the fact that the woman doesn't have a voice other than the moment when she is forgiving this guy. In a sense, it's not full on forgiveness, but it's definitely an acceptance of the event that happened. That's the only time, because I think even in the final chorus, when there is the harmony, I thought it was a female vocal, but I'm pretty sure it's the main vocalist with the falsetto, especially after hearing them go into Muppet mode. Um, so yeah, she barely has a voice of her own at all. And the only time was to accept of what the guy did and say, okay, you know what, I guess we'll go through this marriage after all. And there was one specific line in there that really rubs me wrong now. Um, Something along the lines of, in the future, if maybe be cautious that the end isn't always the end, or saying no isn't the end, or when the fire dies, you think it's over, but it's not, but it's just begun. A word to the wise: when the fire dies, you think it's over, but it's just begun. That just seems to be a sort of acceptance that there's always the possibility that no doesn't mean no. And just like, The song is just, I think at the time, culture was just different, and also I was younger. But I don't know. Right now, man, this song has aged like milk. Aside from the music, I will 100% get behind the musical aspects. If I listened to it again, I would also be quite enthusiastic about some of the new stuff I'm hearing in the music. But the lyrics, man, the lyrics have not aged well. The story has not aged well. At least for me. I'm not saying you can't enjoy it. It is art. I think part of art is to push boundaries. I mentioned yesterday, I think it was yesterday, that the point, horror actually does an awesome job at talking about real life as well, and allowing boundaries to be pushed and topics to be spoken about in sort of extremely like hyper heightened uh, stories. So I think this being art, being multimedia, being visual and audio, and dealing with horror subjects, I think it has the ability to create conversation. I'm not saying that it's a bad song. I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to it. I'm not saying you're not allowed to enjoy it. Just for me, I feel like it promotes ideas that I just don't jive with right now. So that's just my point of view where I'm coming at it right now. But the music still, man, the music's still great. I love it. All right, those are my thoughts on Avenged Sevenfold's A Little Piece of Heaven. That's where you guys come in. Now, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you want to create a conversation about the lyrics specifically, or if there's anything about the music you want to talk about. Go ahead and drop any of those comments down there. I'm open for conversation 100%, as long as it's open-minded and peaceful. It can get heated, all right? I'm not saying you can't get a little heated, but it can't get out of hand, all right? We have a very peaceful comment section here. But like I said, I think it introduces interesting ideas and it provides topics to be spoken about. But I also think it promotes a couple of ideas that I just don't agree with. But on the whole, I think it will open conversation. I'm open to have conversations. Done with that. Moving comments. Above that is the description box, and there's a link for Linktree. Fantastic resource. It takes you to a menu with everything related to the channel. You can check out my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, special selections, email me, all sorts of stuff. Hit me up in there if you're looking for anything outside of watching these videos. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Sorry, excuse me. We'll be finishing up our week. We have 2 more spooky songs for the week, and then we're in the weekend. We got something special planned for next week as well. A little bit like this, where it's a time-based theme. It is, this was Halloween week because Halloween's on Saturday. Well, next week is leading up to something on that Saturday as well. So we're going to have a theme dedicated to that as well. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.